All right, so everyone knows Confucius, right? The wise sage, all those quotes.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about the stuff that, made him who he was, the experiences?
Yeah.
Today, we're going to go back in time and uncover Confucius in exile.
That's right. It's easy to think of Confucius as this timeless figure,
Right.
kind of removed from like messy politics, you know?
Yeah.
But he was right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Power struggles of his time, and that really impacted his philosophy.
So we're talking China's spring and autumn period. Rivalry between states.
Yeah.
Powerful families are vying for control, and right there in the middle of it all,
Yep.
Confucius serving Duke Zhao of Lu, but then things get dramatic.
Uh-huh.
The Duke is forced into exile by the Three Huan families.
Right, these powerful nobles who essentially like controlled the state.
Right.
Now, you got to understand, in this period, exile, it wasn't just like, oh, a personal setback.
Right.
It had huge political implications.
Hmm.
Other codes were expected to offer refuge to exiled rulers and even help them get back in power.
Wow.
It was all about keeping like this balance of power, upholding certain codes of conduct.
So it's a high-stakes game.
Oh, absolutely.
So what does Confucius do?
Well, he decides to follow Duke Zhao into exile,
Wow.
which was, could make or break his career.
Big risk.
Yeah, it's a calculated risk. I
Yeah.
mean, on the one hand, shows loyalty to the Duke, right?
Yeah.
Could lead to big rewards if he regains the throne.
Like, think about the influence Confucius could have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, there's tons of uncertainty.
Yeah.
He's relying on another state, the state of Qi.
Right.
And, who knows how things will turn out for Duke Zhao.
Yeah. So what stands out to you about Confucius's decision?
I think it reveals a lot about his character,
Yeah.
He's clearly not just like a passive scholar.
Right.
This guy is willing to take risks, get into the political arena. He believes in Duke Zhao, and maybe he sees this as a chance to like put his ideas into practice,
About good governance.
Exactly, yeah.
So they end up in the court of Duke Jing of Qi,
Right.
who seems to welcome them. But is it smooth sailing from here?
No.
Okay.
Not really. Duke Zhao is taken care of.
Okay.
But efforts to restore him face big roadblocks. There's internal problems in the ruling Zhou dynasty, and the state of Jin, kind of the overlord of all these smaller states,
Right.
is dealing with its own power struggles.
So bad timing all around.
Yeah, pretty much.
How does this affect Confucius?
Well, imagine you arrive in a foreign court, right?
Yeah.
Full of its own power dynamics.
Right.
Suspicion toward newcomers.
Oh, yeah.
Confucius, he's a scholar,
Yeah.
not a seasoned politician.
Right.
So he struggles. He can't get a good position in the Duke's court.
Oh, wow.
Ends up working for a powerful noble in Qi named Gao Shao, possibly doing like clerical work or continuing to teach.
It's just so interesting how he adapts.
Yeah.
From advisor to a duke to working for a noble.
Right.
In a whole other state.
Totally different.
Talk about resilience.
Totally.
But then something really interesting happens. He has this encounter with Duke Jing of Qi,
Yes.
the ruler who is hosting this entire exile court.
Yeah, this is a pivotal moment.
Okay?
Duke Jing had heard about Confucius, right? His reputation for wisdom.
Right.
And remember, Duke Zhao is right there,
Yeah.
exiled because he wasn't a good ruler.
Right.
So when Duke Jing asks Confucius, what's it take to be successful in governing?
Oh, wow.
It's a loaded question.
I can only imagine the pressure.
Right.
So how does Confucius respond?
He says, let the ruler be a ruler, the subject be a subject, the father be a father, and the son be a son.
Now, that might sound, obvious to us, but how would that have been perceived back then?
Well, actually, it was pretty radical. Yeah, this was a time of like shifting power dynamics.
Right.
Nobles are challenging rulers.
Yeah.
Sons are trying to get their dad's positions.
Wow.
Confucius is advocating for a clear social order
Okay.
where everyone understands their role
Right.
and their responsibilities.
He's saying stick to your roles, maintain harmony.
Exactly.
And Duke Jing seems to get it.
He does.
He even remarks that, if the social order breaks down, everybody suffers, even him.
Yeah.
It's a very practical way of looking at things.
Pragmatic, yeah.
And some accounts even suggest that Duke Jing was so impressed by Confucius that he considered offering him a fief,
Yeah, that's right.
making him like a high-ranking noble in Du.
Right.
So, historians debate this, but it adds intrigue to the story.
Definitely does, yeah.
From exile to nobility.
Right.
All thanks to one insightful answer.
Exactly.
But ultimately, things don't work out that way for Confucius.
Yeah, they don't.
Years pass. Hope of Duke Zhao's return starts to dwindle.
Yeah.
Then we have the intervention of Fan Shanzi,
Right.
a powerful noble from the state of Jin.
Yep.
He tries to make peace between Duke Zhao and the Three Huan.
Yeah.
Sounds promising?
It does.
Could this be like the breakthrough?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Fan Shanzi had his own agenda.
Oh, okay.
He's more interested in getting power for himself in Jin than genuinely helping Duke Zhao.
Oh, wow.
So he tries to like persuade Duke Zhao to return to Lu and just, basically accept that the Three Huan are in control.
That's not really a solution.
No.
Of course, Duke Zhao refuses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the intervention fails,
Yeah.
which highlights the declining power of the state of Jin,
Right.
and, just the bleak prospects for Duke Zhao, and in turn, Confucius.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a pretty low point.
it is.
So what happens next?
Tragically, 2 years after that, Duke Zhao dies.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah,
All those years wanting to go home.
I know.
It ends like that.
It does.
So his court disbands. The Three Huan choose a different brother, a more, how do you say,
Pliable
brother to become the new duke.
Right.
And they consolidate their power in Lu.
Exactly.
But here's another twist.
Yeah.
Historical accounts suggest that Confucius went back to Lu before Duke Zhao died.
That's right, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
He leaves before it's over.
he does.
Why would he do that?
Good question. It's not entirely clear from the sources, but maybe he saw the writing on the wall,
Yeah.
The intervention failed. Duke Zhao was getting older.
Right.
No clear path to getting him back.
Right.
And Confucius was 42 by this point.
Mm.
And he famously said, at 40, I had no doubts.
Right.
Maybe those years in exile, seeing the failures of political maneuvering, brought him to that point,
Yeah, like clarity.
Yeah, like clarity.
Disillusioned, but with a new sense of purpose.
Perhaps.
Heads back home.
Yep.
What awaits him in Lujiang?
Right.
And how did this experience shape him?
Yeah.
We'll have to unpack that in part 2.
It's fascinating to think about how this exile, which seems like a major setback, might have actually been like a turning point,
Yeah.
in Confucius's intellectual development.
Yeah.
It's like these experiences, these failures and frustration pushed him to go deeper into his ideas about the world.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
So you're saying these difficult years actually helped shape his philosophy?
I think it's very likely. Yeah, he went into exile with certain, expectations,
Right.
maybe even like political ambitions. He was
Yeah.
betting on Duke Zhao,
Right.
hoping to rise with him and influence change.
But instead, he's hit with these, harsh realities
Yeah.
of power struggles,
Right.
fragility of alliances,
Ah,
limits of his own influence. It's like a crash course in political disillusionment.
exactly. And that forces him to reevaluate
Yeah.
his assumptions about how the world works.
Right.
About power.
Right.
About, the role of a scholar in society.
So this makes me wonder if it was during this time that he really starts to solidify those ideas
Yeah.
about ethical leadership, the importance of virtue,
Right.
moral principles in governing.
Yeah, it's a compelling theater.
Right.
After all, when he gets back to Lu, he doesn't, just jump back into politics.
Right.
Instead, he focuses on teaching,
Yeah.
developing his philosophical ideas.
Right.
It's like he shifts his focus from trying to change the world through politics
Yeah.
to shaping the minds of future leaders,
Hmm.
hoping they'll embody those principles.
So even though he's had this political setback, he's not giving up on his ideals.
No, not at all.
He's finding a different way to make a difference.
Exactly, yeah.
And this brings us to another one of his sayings that might be connected to this experience.
Okay.
A gentleman is dignified, but not contemptuous, sociable, but not cliquish.
Yeah, I love that quote.
Such a relevant quote even today.
It is.
How do you connect it back to his time in exile?
Well, in exile, Confucius tried to align himself with a political faction,
Yeah,
Duke Zhao's supporters.
right,
Didn't work out well.
Right.
In fact, it backfired.
right.
And I think this experience may have made him realize the dangers
Yeah.
of getting too caught up in, factionalism,
Yeah.
political maneuvering.
It's like he learned that true leadership isn't about clinging to power
Right.
or forming these, exclusive groups.
Yeah.
It's about rising above those petty squabbles
Right.
and focusing on what's really important.
Exactly.
Principles,
Yeah.
integrity,
Right.
the well-being of society.
Exactly. And there's a great anecdote that shows this.
Oh, okay.
It's in the Analects.
Right.
So Confucius is back in Lu, right?
Yeah.
And he gets criticized for defending Duke Zhao,
Okay.
even though the Duke's, no longer in power.
Right.
And somebody says to him, didn't you say a gentleman doesn't form cliques? Why are you still defending your old political buddy?
Ouch. That's got to sting.
I know.
Especially after everything he's been through.
Right.
And it shows it his actions were being watched.
Right.
That this association with Duke Xiao had a lasting impact.
It really did. And it highlights the social consequences
Right.
of political affiliations,
Yeah.
Even though he's back in Lua, he's not exactly, welcomed back with open arms.
Right.
He's still dealing with the ripple effects of his exile.
It makes you think about the lasting impact of the choices we make,
Absolutely.
especially in a society where those social connectors are so important.
Yeah.
Right.
And remember those two prominent disciples we talked about,
Yes.
Menyizi and Nanggao Jingshu?
Yeah.
The ones that aren't on that traditional list of 72 disciples.
Right. It seems strange they'd be omitted, especially, since they were so close to Confucius.
That is strange. And some scholars actually think this is directly related to their ties to the Three Huan families.
Right, those powerful nobles who opposed Duke Cao.
Exactly, yeah.
So even years later, those political divisions from his exile are shaping relationships,
Right.
influencing who's in and who's out.
Exactly.
It just shows how deep those political fault lines ran.
They really did.
And that they continued to have an impact.
Yeah.
Even long after.
Yeah, and it also reminds us that Confucius wasn't just like this wise sage,
Right.
dispensing timeless wisdom.
Yeah.
He was a real person
Right.
navigating these complex political realities,
Yeah.
dealing with the consequences of his choices,
Yeah.
even experiencing social ostracism,
It makes him so much more, like, human.
Right.
And relatable.
Exactly.
We all face these situations where we have to make tough choices. And sometimes those choices come back,
They do, yeah.
to haunt us.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, that even though he's back in Lu, it doesn't seem like he's achieved that influence that maybe he envisioned.
No, not really.
So what happens next?
Well, this is where things get interesting again.
Okay.
Confucius decides to leave Lu again.
Okay.
But this time, it's not exile.
Okay.
It's a different kind of journey.
Okay.
He embarks on what we now call his travels among the states.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more about these travels.
Okay, well, he spends years traveling throughout China, visiting different courts, offering advice to rulers, getting into philosophical debates. It's like he's taking his ideas on the road,
Right.
seeking out, those who might be open to his message.
So he's almost like a wandering philosopher.
Yeah, in a way.
Sharing wisdom, seeking out like-minded people.
Exactly.
But why does he leave again? What's pushing him?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something we'll explore in part 3.
Okay.
But I think it's safe to say his experiences in exile, the setbacks and the things he learned, they played a major role
Right.
in shaping this next chapter
Yeah.
of his life.
So he's back in Luxia after all those years in exile, but he doesn't stay for long.
Right.
Instead, heads out on these travels, among the states.
Yeah.
Seems like, I don't know, kind of a bold move after everything he's been through.
Yeah.
Why leave what's familiar, especially when he's not exactly being welcomed back?
I think that's a key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it says a lot about Confucius. His character, his commitment to his ideals. Think about it,
Yeah.
He's experienced political disillusionment,
Yeah.
social ostracism,
Yeah.
loss of his patron, but he doesn't, become cynical or reclusive. He
Yeah.
keeps going, keeps engaging with the world, keeps looking for those opportunities to make a difference.
Makes me think of those inspiring figures,
Yeah.
who face these setbacks but never give up.
Right.
They just find a way to adapt, to find new avenues
Yeah.
for their passions. So what was he hoping to achieve through these travels?
Hmm.
Was it still about political influence, or was it something more?
Well, that's where it looks really interesting.
Okay.
These travels weren't about power or revenge.
Right.
This was about something much bigger.
Okay.
Refining and spreading his ideas about good governance, ethical leadership,
Right.
the importance of education. Imagine him traveling to all these different courts,
Yeah.
debating, challenging rulers, inspiring thinkers.
So almost like he's on a mission
Yeah.
to plant these seeds for a better society,
Exactly.
hoping they'll take root
Yeah.
in different parts of China.
Yeah, and it's during these travels that, those famous Confucian concepts we've heard of,
Right.
like Ren and Le,
Right.
they really start to take shape.
Okay, so let's break those down a bit.
Sure.
We've all heard those terms, but what do they really mean?
Yeah.
In the context of his philosophy.
Right. So Ren is often translated as like benevolence,
Okay.
humanness. It's about cultivating compassion, empathy,
Right.
a sense of duty towards others.
Oh, okay.
It's not just about being a good ruler. It's about being a good person.
Right.
Recognizing that, every human being has worth and dignity.
So ethical leadership begins with personal virtue.
Exactly.
You can't lead others effectively unless you've got those qualities in yourself.
Exactly. And then there's Le,
Yeah.
often translated as like rituals or rites.
Right.
But it's not just about empty formalities
Right.
or just like following rules blindly.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the importance of social norms
Hmm.
and how they contribute to like, harmony and order.
Right.
It's about behaving appropriately in different situations, respecting hierarchies, understanding the interconnectedness of society.
And it's interesting to think how these ideas might have been shaped, by that exile experience.
Yeah.
He saw what happens when those social structures break down.
Yeah.
When people just abandon those principles
Right.
of respect and duty.
And his travels, they allowed him to kind of refine those ideas through real world observation, dialogue. He wasn't just like theorizing in isolation.
Right.
He was engaging
Yeah.
with different societies and seeing how those principles played out.
It's just amazing to think that even though he never held a high political office again,
Yeah.
he had this profound impact
He really did.
on Chinese thought and culture.
Right.
So how did these travels, contribute to that legacy?
Well, I think those years on the road, they were crucial. They allowed him to test and refine his ideas,
Right.
build up this network of disciples,
Yeah.
and spread his teachings
Right.
far and wide. And his ideas, they resonated
Yeah.
with people from all walks of life,
Mm.
and they got passed down through generations.
So even though he wasn't like ruling a state,
Right.
he was shaping the minds and hearts of all these people
Right.
who would then go on to influence their own community.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that influence just ripples through history.
It does.
Confucianism, it became like a cornerstone
Oh, yeah.
of Chinese culture, influencing everything.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's incredible to think about how this one person who went through so much,
Yeah. Right.
could have such an impact.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Hmm.
what are some key takeaways?
Hmm.
What do you hope our listeners will think about?
I think there are a few things.
Yeah.
First, Confucius' story, it reminds us that resilience and perseverance, they're so important.
Yeah.
Especially when, you're pursuing something bigger than yourself.
Right.
He faced so many challenges, but he never abandoned his ideals.
Right.
He found new ways to express them, to make a difference.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you
It makes you stronger.
makes you stronger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exile, social ostracism, these could have broken him,
Yeah.
but instead it fueled him.
Right.
And second,
Well, I think it shows the power of ideas.
Right.
He didn't achieve, like political dominance,
Mm.
but his philosophy, it transformed a culture
Mm.
and continues to influence billions of people.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that sometimes the best kind of leadership, it's not about like wielding power. It's about,
Mhm.
planting those seeds of thought
Yeah.
that can grow and change.
Of the bottom up.
Yeah,
It's inspiring.
it is.
We face those setbacks, disappointments,
Right.
but we can choose how to respond.
Yeah.
We can get bitter and cynical,
Yeah.
or we can learn, grow, and find new ways to have a positive impact.
Exactly. And finally, I
Yes.
think his story, it encourages us, to think about our own values, how we live them out in the world. What do we believe in? What are we willing to fight for?
Yeah.
How can we, like Confucius, use our own experiences to make things, more just and harmonious?
Those are some powerful questions to end on.
They are.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Confucius's life, his legacy, it's a timeless source of wisdom. For anyone really trying to live a life of purpose and meaning,
Yeah.
it's a journey worth exploring. I encourage everyone to keep digging into this fascinating chapter of history.